Sebastian time. I am your host, Sebastian. This is me rambling about my current passion for writing, which is not current so much as has always been, but has been put on the back burner. And I've already recorded a video about this that was over 20 minutes, and I was like, that is way too long. I don't even want to edit that. I'm going to take another stab at this and see if I can really condense it, because I went into too many details that are not even necessary. So, let's start at the beginning, which was back in 3rd grade when I was like, I want to be a writer. I love reading, so I want to write. So I read a bunch of short stories. I was in 3rd grade. They weren't great. Whatever. And then in 6th grade, I wrote what I did not realize at the time, but is now, I understand, is technically called self-insert fan fiction, which is basically, it was this series that's 40 books long and has had over like 5 or 6 different writers. So I thought, I'm just going to write one. If 6 other people can write it, why can't I? So I didn't really think of it as fan fiction, and it wasn't great. I didn't understand the 3-act plot structure at that point in 6th grade, so it had a great beginning, it had an ending, it had no middle. It was character arrives, character goes to defeat villain, he defeats villain, the end. It's not a book. So then the next thing was the summer between freshman and sophomore year in high school. My buddy Dylan and I decided that we were going to take a stab at writing a book, and it was basically going to be about some adventures that we had created when we were several years younger. We had invented this fantasy land and these characters and these quests and things, so we were just going to write a book about that place that we had invented. And it was not great. It did have a 3-act plot structure, I think, but it wasn't even technically a novel. A novel has to be at least 30,000 words, and I think this thing was, if I had to guess, probably only like 20,000 or something like that. And it was not good. And then, after that, I went ahead and decided to rewrite that fanfic-y thing, and I wrote like a first chapter for it, and it was good, but then I lost interest and stopped writing that. And then, when I was like 21, I think, I decided to take that thing that my friend and I had written and rewrite it from scratch. And I rewrote the first 3 chapters, and it was much better with some input that I had gotten from a writer friend of mine, a famous published writer. And then I even sent that off to a publisher, probably the last publisher in the whole universe that was accepting unsolicited manuscripts. Basically, publishers do not want to look at your stuff if you're just some Joe Schmo. They will toss it right into the trash. But you have to have an agent, usually. This publisher was still accepting unsolicited manuscripts for some reason, so I went ahead and sent it. I'm sure they know who they are. And I got a prompt, no thanks, from them. And I was like, I'm done with writing. I'm clearly terrible at this. What's the point? And it wasn't terrible, it just wasn't great, so no wonder why they didn't want it. Also, I think it was unbeknownst to me, I had written a young adult book and thought I was writing a fantasy book, and they were not a young adult publisher, they were a fantasy publisher. A young adult fantasy is what I had written unbeknownst to myself at that point in time, based on word count and tone and the character age. So anyways, fast forward to about 5 years ago, National November Writing Month, NaNoWriMo, came, and that's this thing where you start writing on November 1st and you stop writing at the end of November, and by God, you better have written 30,000 words, because that's how long a thing needs to be a novel, and it has to be a brand new idea and all that kind of stuff. And so I took a stab at it by taking some aspects of my life from like ages 20 to 21 and heavily fictionalizing it, adding in fantasy elements, urban fantasy elements, and to make it interesting, but I didn't have an end for it. I had no idea. There was no plot, really. It was just an autobiographical thing. So anyways, I stopped writing it because I did not know where the hell it was going and what even the point of writing it was. It was just for NaNoWriMo, and I got too busy to do it, so I stopped. And now we fast forward to about a year ago today. I had just finished reading a book that I really, really liked. And there's a movie based on this book that I had previously seen to reading the book, which I also really liked, but I had some issues with it. I felt like things were a little too easy for the character in some regards. Some aspects of life that I had experienced that I was like, it was not that easy for me. And I was thinking about some other people that I know who was a million times less easy for, and I was like, that character got away with that too easily. The only conflict in it was kind of this gimmick that was kind of a little cheesy. So anyways, I thought, I should write something that's more authentic, I think. And I could write that, right? Write what you know, but I had never had any interest in writing only fantasy. I only envision myself as being the next J.R.R. Tolkien, writing this epic fantasy series with thousands of years of history and all this stuff. That never came to fruition. And so I thought, well, this is not my wheelhouse, but I'll take a stab at it anyway. And so I outlined it in extreme detail, and basically even some lines of the characters were written, and then put it aside. All the way until November, middle of November this last year, in 2018, I was like, you know what? I should just write this. What is the problem? I'm going to get a brand new laptop. My laptop was a piece of crap, and I'm going to write it immediately as soon as I get that laptop. So I got the laptop, I started writing it, and then a month later I was done, which is insane. 65,000 words, and I was done. And so then I was like, is this good? It can't possibly be good if I wrote it that fast. So I was revising it, and as I'm revising it, I'm convincing myself I'm surely going to want to change everything because it's probably all terrible. And as I'm revising it, I'm like, no, this is all pretty much just fine, just little errors here and there, and I want to clarify things here and there, but it's probably fine. And so I was like, oh my gosh, this is a book? Maybe I should try to get this published? I don't know how to do that. So I researched that. And unlike it was years ago, you can't just send it to a publisher and have them look at it. They will throw it away. You have to have an agent. They will only look at agented books. So how do you get an agent? It turns out it's very hard. Basically, what you have to do is send an agent a query letter. And it can't just be any agent. You first have to find an agent that's specific to the genre of the book you're writing. Some agents only deal with certain genres and they have no interest in other genres, or some deal with all genres except one. A lot of agents, for whatever reason, are like, I will agent anything, but no fantasy or sci-fi. No interest in that. Thankfully, this thing isn't fantasy or sci-fi, but it is young adults, and some agents don't want anything to do with young adults, so whatever. So anyways, you have to write a query letter, and that can't just be whatever you want to write off the top of your head. The query letter itself has a very specific formula. You have to specify the word count, you have to specify the genre and the subgenre and the themes, you have to give them a hook, which is a one-sentence condension of why anybody should want to read this story. You have to tell them, like, the interesting thing about this book in one sentence, and then a brief paragraph about the basic plot. And then you have to write why you, the author, is the best person equipped to write this particular story, and then why they, the agent, is the best possible agent to represent this book, which means you have to research this agent. And that's a whole thing. Like, most agents work for a big company of agents, and so you can't send it to every agent at that company. In fact, they only want you to send it to one agent, and some agencies say, if that agent says no, don't even bother contacting any of us. Some agencies say, if that one said no, go ahead and send it to another one, but don't send it to multiple ones. So that's a whole thing, and then you have to look at what each of these agents specifically is interested in terms of themes and what kind of style of writing they want, and it's very time-consuming. A lot of people think that the hard part of writing is writing the book. No. It is this whole other process, the agenting process. So in any case, I did my research, wrote a query letter, sent it out to a bunch of agents, and I actually got 4 full asks, which is where the agent... Oh, and I forgot to mention, when you send it out, some agents with the query letter... Some agents just want the query letter. Some agents want the query letter and the first 5 pages. Some agents want the query letter and 10 pages. Some want 30 pages. Some want 50 pages. Some want a specific number of chapters. So if you send the wrong thing, they're like, they can't follow the rules, delete. So you have to be very careful. And so anyways, I got 4 full asks, which is where the agent says, I like what I read from you. I want to read the rest. Send me the whole manuscript, please. And so I did. And then one of those agents got back to me and said, did you know that this is technically not a young adult book after all? In fact, it isn't any specific genre of book. It's technically a new adult book, but that genre doesn't actually exist. It was started and destroyed. Like, nobody cares about new adult books. They're not sellable. So this book is not sellable. And so I was like, well, great. What do? I guess I change the age of the character, because the reason why it's not young adult is young adult, the character has to be 18 or younger and has to be still in high school. And my character was 19 and had just graduated high school and was now living on his own in an apartment, having a job. nope, gotta change that. So I knew I have to rewrite this basically from scratch because so much of the plot was dependent on him no longer being in high school, no longer living with his mom, all that stuff. So I put the rewriting of that on the back burner while I was like, you know what I want to do, just to get it out of the way. I want to go ahead and finish writing that weird autobiographical but with fantasy element thing. I'm not trying to get that published. I just want to finish writing it. So I finished writing that, got that out of the way, and as I was revising that, I was like, okay, fine, I'll rewrite book number 1 from scratch, basically. And I was able to keep, I want to say, about 50% of it, but a good 50% of it had to be completely rewritten from scratch, which was interesting, but actually I feel like it's better now, which is why it's interesting that there are still 3 agents that have asked for the full ask. They have the full manuscripts. I have not heard from them, so when they get back to me, I don't even know what to say, except I've got this completely new version. Anyways, so that's books 1 and 2, and technically 3 is also a different version of 1. So 4 I came up with while I was rewriting 1, and that was because I was reading this other book that dealt with some of the same themes, but had like this gimmick in it, and I was like, this book is good, but it kind of annoys me that obviously the only reason why it got published is because of this gimmick. And the gimmick was that it was kind of like the opposite of Parent Trap. It was like these 2 kids in high school are enemies, but their parents are getting together and they can't stand that, so they team up to keep their parents apart. And I was like, should I just steal a Disney movie and twist it around on its head, and that will get me a published book? And I was like, what even would that be? What other movie is there? And I thought of a Disney movie that I could do that with, and I was like, well, what's the twisting it on its head part? Okay, I came up with that. Who are these characters? What's the plot? I outline it. I've got a book, and I'm like, actually, this could be a good book. Why don't I write this? So then I went ahead and started writing that and finished that and revised that. And while I'm not hearing anything about book number 1 anymore, and that's dead, I'm like, I guess I'm going to try to get agents to look at this. And so I've been much more selective and have sent that out to some agents. And I've had 1 full ask for that so far. Hopefully I'll get more. Hopefully. I think it's good. And then while that's been happening, I started writing a completely different kind of book, a fairy tale-y kids book. Technically it's a middle grade book, which means the character has to be no older than 13. And that's basically the reading audience, is that age. And so I've been writing that, but while I was writing that, somebody else was telling me about this other book that they were reading that was about this girl who was working at a rinky-dink theme park, and I was like, I worked at a rinky-dink theme park. I would love to write a book about my experiences there and draw from my life from that point in time, because tons of crazy stuff happened to me and to other people that I knew at that point in time. So I outlined that and writing that. So I'm writing the fairy tale thing and the theme park thing at the same time right now, which is messing with my brain, and I'm taking a break from it, which is why I'm recording this video, because my brain got a little too like, ugh. So anyways, that's what I've been up to. Haven't been playing, let's try that again. I have not been playing any video games for months now, and that's why. Been too busy with this whole writing thing. Who knows, maybe none of this will ever get published. Maybe all of them will get published. We'll see in time. I'll let you guys know. Anyways, I'll see you for the next video. I'm gonna get back to writing. See you guys. Bye.